Hi, this is Shel Holtz, and I'm coming to you from Concord, California. And I am the co-host of For Immediate Release, which is a podcast that deals with public relations. And today I want to talk about how to do a mix minus. This is the way that you can record a Skype conversation, getting both ends of the conversation without latency. Now, there are a lot of ways that you can record both ends of a Skype conversation. There's software that's just terrific, like Hot Recorder. But the problem is that in a lot of instances, you end up with this latency. What that means is the person on the other end of the call ends up hearing his own voice echo back at him. Now, that's okay for a minute or two, but if you do a podcast that lasts 90 minutes, like my co-host Neville Hobson and I do, that gets really disconcerting. So today I'm going to show you the setup that I use in order to get rid of that latency, to get rid of that echo. Come on inside, I'll show you how it works. What we're going to be talking about today is a setup called a mix minus, and there are really three things that you need in order to put together a mix minus rig. The first of those is a mixer, and I'm using a Mackie 1202 VLZ Pro. Runs about $300. You can get one that's cheaper than that, other brands. The next thing you need is a digital recorder. Now, you may think that you're going to be recording into the computer, but with a mix minus you can't do that. You have to record into a separate digital device. I'm using one called a Marantz PMD660. Any digital recorder will do. And the third thing you need is the computer that is equipped with Skype. And aside from some cables and headphones, that's really all you need in order to produce a mix minus rig. Now, whatever mixer you get, it has to come with auxiliary send and return jacks. These are right here. You can see we have auxiliary send and auxiliary return, and on the send we have 1 and 2. Those are very important. You can't do the mix minus without the auxiliary. Now, what I want to do is explain how an auxiliary works. Now, the auxiliary lets you send output from the mixer to a device just the way the main mix output does. The difference is that you can go through each of your inputs and dial down the auxiliary so that that particular input doesn't go to that device. So in this instance, what we're going to do is take the auxiliary out of the mixer, so that's all of the output from the mixer, and send it to the computer. But what we're going to do is dial down the input of the voice of the person on the other end of the call. So we're going to jack this into auxiliary line 1, and in a little bit we'll connect that over to the computer. The next thing that's important to know is that you're going to be recording in stereo, and I'm going to show you how all of this affects the setup on the mixer in just a minute. But what we're going to do is record everything that you say and everything else that's going into the mix on one channel, and the voice of the person on the other end of the Skype call is going to be coming through on the other channel. So all of this to the left channel, except the voice of the person on the other end of the Skype call, that'll be coming in on the right channel. So we'll start off by plugging in the microphone. The microphone is going to go into line 1. Now, in the case of my setup, I have my microphone running through a preamp, so I end up with a simple 1/4 inch jack that I'm going to plug into line 1. But if you look down here now, you'll see that I have panned this all the way to the left. That means that all of the sound that comes out of microphone line input 1 is going to go into the left stereo channel. Now, the next thing we have to do is get the voice of the person on the other end of the call into the mix. For that, we're going to use one of these. This is a Y cable. It's a splitter. You'll notice that we have 2 1/4 inch jacks on one end and an 1/8 inch mini jack on the other end. We're going to take these 1/4 inch jacks that are on the split end, and we're going to put them, in this case, into input lines 5 and 6. And then you'll notice that we have this one panned all the way to the right. So the voice of the person on the other end of the call is going to record on the stereo track that's to the right track. And what we're going to do with this, and we'll show you this in a little bit, is we're going to plug this into the headphone jack on the computer. So everything you would normally hear over the headphones or over the speakers is going to go into the mixer, become part of the mix, and it's going to go in through these lines 5 and 6. You can put them into any lines that you have open and available. Now remember, we are running a cable from the auxiliary line 1 to the computer input, and what we're going to do now is the thing that makes this a mix minus. We are going to take the auxiliary 1. You'll notice there's an auxiliary dial for every one of your inputs, and we're going to make sure it's turned all the way down. That means this line, this is the voice of the person on the other end of the call, is going to be subtracted from the mix as it goes into the computer. So the person on the other end of the call isn't going to hear himself, but he'll hear everything else coming out of the mix. Now over here you'll see the main output. This is what we're actually going to record, and this is why you can't go into the computer and record there. We could do that with the auxiliary, but since we've dialed down the sound from line 5 and 6, input 5 and 6, that means you'd be recording everything except the voice of the person on the other end of the call. Kind of defeats the purpose. So what we're going to do is take the main mix, which has everything including the voice of the other person at the other end of the call, and we're going to run that over here into the line in on the Marantz PMD660. See, we have a line in right there. We're going to take that 1/4 inch and plug it in, and this is where we're going to record everything. Now there's one more thing that we should look at on the mixer. Now what if you want to add another input? Let's say you want to play some music, or you have some audio files you want to play. You can't play those on your computer because remember, all the sound coming out of the computer is being dialed down on the auxiliary and won't make it into that mix. So what we need to do is plug in another Y cable. See, we have a Y cable here, a splitter, and we're going to plug this one arbitrarily into 9 and 10, and then we're going to run that into another device to play music or audio files. This could be another computer. It could also be something as simple as an iPod. In fact, that's what I use, is an iPod Nano. And you'll notice that we have this panned all the way to the left, so it's on the same stereo track as my voice, not the same stereo track as the person on the other end of the call. And we have the auxiliary dialed all the way up so the person who's on the other end of the call can hear it. So remember, we have an 1/8 inch that's coming out of the mixer. This is the one that is going into lines 5 and 6. This is the voice of the person on the other end of the Skype call. We want to get that out of the computer and into the mixer. So this goes into the headphone jack. And then we have the auxiliary line. This is the line that's coming out of auxiliary 1, and that's going to go into the input port, the input jack on the laptop. So let's go ahead and make a Skype call. We'll call the Skype call testing service, just so we can make sure that we're getting both ends of the call into the recorder. So let's go ahead and call the Skype call testing service. Now if you look at the lights over here on the PMD660, you'll notice that the right and the left lights are both firing up. That means we're hearing the sounds of the Skype call testing recording, and the other one is recording my voice as I'm talking into the microphone. So this is working. We're getting both ends of the call into the recording device. Now the last part that you need to be aware of is in the post-production. After you have imported this file from your digital recorder onto your computer and into your editing software, you need to be able to get those stereo tracks to be mono. Otherwise what people will hear is one side of the call in one side of their headphones and the other side of the call in the other side. It's very unpleasant to listen to. So we're going to make both of these tracks mono. Now I'm using Audacity, which is the free recording and editing software that's available for both the PC and the Mac, and I have imported the file that I just recorded, the one of the Skype call testing service. What I'll do now is I'm going to come over here to the stereo track. You can see that we have left and right channels. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to split the stereo track. Now they are two separate tracks, and for each of those I'm going to make them mono. Like that, so that each of those will play out of both sides of the headphones, out of both speakers on a speaker system. And that's really all there is to a mix minus, so start recording those Skype interviews and liven up your podcasts.